Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode 4 of Turn Over the Tape. My name is Keegan, and this week we are actually joined by two very, very, very well studied up guests. Firstly, we have Matt, as always. Matt, how are you?
Yeah, good mate. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. And we also have a special guest this week, and that is Lincoln, my brother, who is also a diehard Suns fan. Lincoln, how are you?
Good, thank you. Cruising along nicely.
Excellent, excellent. All right. So we had our first game of the season, round one. We flew over to Perth, WA. We played the West Coast Eagles and we actually came out down. We ended up losing 12-1-83 to the Eagles and we went 8-10-58. So I would think an honourable loss. Lincoln, what do you think? How did you think the game went overall, just as a brief summary?
Um, Look, if I could erase the first 3 or so minutes, I would. Apart from that, pretty good. In the end, I think it was a bit disappointing, but that's expected. They are a lot more sort of a mature team than we are in terms of like bodies and tanks, if you will. So
Yep.
overall, I'll give it a solid B minus.
All right, excellent. Yeah, so B minus plus. That's a good rating. Matt, how do you think? How did you feel about the game overall, just briefly?
Yeah, pretty optimistic about it, to be honest. I think I saw a lot of things that I thought would be issues for the Suns not present as issues as badly. So, for instance, the defense held up pretty well. So I'm actually pretty encouraged by it. It's a shame that the scoreline ended up being 25 points in the end. I think probably 2 or 3 goals was a better reflection of the team's difference in the end. But yeah, I mean, the sentiment's about the same. And yeah, the first 3 minutes, whew.
Yeah, that's those first 3 minutes. I think you could ask my wife how I was feeling about that. I was ready to turn off the TV after the first 5 minutes. We stuck with it though, and we ended up fighting it out pretty well. And as I agree, Matt, I don't think that the sort of the end score really reflected well of how close the actual game was. All right, but we'll talk about more of it in depth a bit later. But just off the top, first thing, what did you think of the lineup? Lincoln, let's start with you. What did you think of the lineup that we started with? Who was in, who was out? Did you agree with how it all looked?
I'd say, yeah, I did agree. I know Harbrow, which he's sort of been a mainstay for our team for the last couple of years. I think it was Sean Lemons came in as the direct replacement. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I think that's correct.
Yeah. I think that he actually kept Liam Ryan pretty quiet, I'd say, until the end, because I actually got to listen to the Triple M coverage of it, and hearing Dennis Cometti speak is amazing. Thank God. And that was sort of saying like Liam Ryan just not really doing much, and then I think he bobbed up at the end, like when everyone was quiet. So definitely, I liked it.
All right, excellent. Matt, what did you make of the lineup as well, but sort of more sort of focused? What did you think of Holman as the 23rd sub?
I mean, sad we had to use him, obviously, but his
I will
pressure
get
around the
to
ball
that.
was pretty good. And his goal in the fourth quarter sort of gave me, 2 or 3 minutes of false hope. I don't think he was particularly bad. I think he sort of suits that particular role, actually, as the new 23rd man. So I was actually pretty happy with Holman's inclusion, to be honest.
What about overall? Did you like the way the team set up?
Yeah, I mean, my biggest worry about not having Harbrow was that there may have been some leadership lacking in the defensive structure. But I mean, I thought we held up really well all game. I mean, we kept West Coast to 80 odd points on their home deck when they traditionally would belt weak teams. So, and they got goals late. Like there was a couple of junk time goals in there. So I'm pretty happy all up with the choices made. Stewie Jew, I think, made the right choice.
Yeah, I definitely think he made the right choice as well. You probably heard me a few times on this podcast go on about Darcy McPherson. I feel like if I was sort of picking the team, I probably would have maybe opted for like a Sam Flanders instead of Darcy McPherson. Darcy as is in as a pressure forward, but he had 0 tackles. Like,
Yeah.
if your job's if your job is a pressure forward and you've got 0 tackles, then what does that really tell you? So we talked about the first 3 minutes of West Coast. We'll ignore the first 3 minutes because that was absolutely diabolical. The team just stopped and West Coast just ran over the top of us very quickly. And then, of course, we had that awful injury that we all know about, that we've probably all heard about 5 times already today. And that was Rowell going down with what looks like a PCL injury, or I don't even know what these injuries look like, but this is what I'm being told by reading different things, and that it looks like a PCL injury. Matt, what do you think the effect of Rowell's injury is going to have on the football club going forward this season?
Given the fact we got to play basically most of the season last year without Rowell, I think they should be fairly well equipped to deal with it. For the first time in a while, I think there's actually competition for places in the side. So, I mean, someone like Fiorini might find their way into the side and be hungry for game time, knowing full well that he might not get another opportunity if he doesn't sort of put the effort in. So I mean, it's obviously a loss, and it sucks given the long injury road he had to go through to get back. But I think the team should be okay. This isn't a death knell or anything.
Yeah, no, that's a good way. I reckon that's a good way to look at it. I think we got enough practice with it last year of playing without arguably one of our best players. And it sounds absolutely bizarre to say that when he's played 4.5 games, or not even 4.5 games. But yeah, I definitely think that's a bit of a weird one. Lincoln, how long do you think Rowell's going to be out for, if you were to have a guess?
I guess, like, optimistically, I think anywhere between like 4 to 6. I think it depends, because they've done the scans tonight. I think they said that they're going to do Monday night, which is tonight.
Yeah.
I'd say optimistically, 4 to 6, but I think my head tells me somewhere a bit more. It depends if it's a high grade, the PCL that they were talking about. He's hoping it's the less of the two.
Yeah, I think we might see him mid-year. I think it's going to be halfway through the season. I reckon second half of the season, he probably comes back in. I reckon, again, they're going to be super cautious with him, because he could be a 10-year player for the Suns, and what he does in the first 2, I think you sort of wait until maybe he's grown up a bit, and that's where you want him to start peaking at 24, 25, not 19, 20. So we talked about sort of the slow start, the Rowell injury. Overall, I think we've all said that we thought the effort was pretty good. Matt, what do you think was the one, like, if you were to pick one massive positive out of the game? Because there were a lot to pick from. It wasn't just a game where we sort of drifted through. If there was one massive positive you could pick from the game, what would it be?
In terms of a player, I think Jack Boze was excellent, right? Like, what do you have? 30 touches, 100% disposal efficiency. Like, he was great down back. But I think what that sort of game actually gave us was, it felt like we had composure for most of the game. Like, it really wasn't until sort of midway through the 4th that the wheels came off. It felt like we were really controlled with the ball. And I, for the first time ever, felt comfortable with a Suns player kicking across the face of goals in defense. It was just composure would be the word I would take out of that.
Yeah. Just to sort of back up what you said about Jack Boze. So Jack Boze had 30 disposals. He had 28 kicks, 2 handballs, 14 marks, and his disposal efficiency was 100%. So
crazy.
Absolutely, like, for a Suns player to have a disposal efficiency of 100%, having 30 touches is unheard of. So I think he had an absolutely ripper game. Lincoln, same question to you. What if there was one massive positive you could take out of the game? What would it be?
I think it's in a weekend of like super quick football. I think it was like we actually put in quite a good, like, slower, sort of more grinding performance. I think you saw like other teams that were just going back and forth, and there was certainly stages of that for us. But we were also able to claw it back and grind out and just keep pushing through. Oh, it's good. It's good to be able to say that.
Yeah. And from watching the other football, like, I remember I watched the Essendon Hawthorn game, and I just remember seeing that game was just absolutely frantic, and those players, there was a lot of mistakes. And even though Hawthorn won, I would still think the Suns are better from what I saw just on the weekend, just as a 1-game sample size. I think the Suns played better than both Hawthorn and Essendon because that game was absolutely full of mistakes. Exciting, definitely, but I think the Suns showed that they can be a lot more controlling. Probably also another reason we probably played a bit slower, as Lincoln pointed out, was probably because of how hot it was. It was something like 35 degrees, and you can't be running around like going absolutely helter-skelter in 35-degree heat. You'll run yourself into the ground by half time, and then. So I reckon that might have had a bit of a thing to bit of a effect on the game and our strategy. I don't know how we'll go against North Melbourne this weekend, but we'll talk about North Melbourne in a little bit. Sort of just to round off on the West Coast game, we're going to do our medal. Me and Matt did talk about this a few weeks ago. We're going to have a best and fairest for the podcast. I haven't still unnamed for the moment, but we will get there. We're going to get two people to do votes each week, but because Lincoln is our special guest this week, I think that he can do a 3, 2, and a 1 for us, and Matt can do a 3, 2, and a 1 for us, and then we'll tally it up and we'll have an early leader or leaders for our soon to be named medal. So Lincoln, do you want to kick us off with your 3, your 2, and your 1, and just a little bit of explanation of why you picked who you picked?
Okay.
And why?
I might have some controversial opinions here, but we'll see.
That's all right. We like a controversial opinion here, so that's fine. Go ahead.
Number 1, don't hate me for saying this, Sam Collins. I think he was pretty solid. I didn't think he didn't do anything too majorly bad. I think that, I suppose he kept like Josh Kennedy and things pretty quiet. It was Charlie Ballard who gave away that free kick against him. And I think it was also Jack Boze who conceded one of the first goals as well. So it wasn't his fault. He was pretty solid. 2, once again, I could have swapped either or. I put Jack Boze as 2, very stiff, I know. I know we talked about his 100% efficiency. I just think he could have done better in like some instances, particularly like once again the first couple minutes, which had still haunted me. Number 3, though, I really like Jack Lukosius. His kicking was phenomenal. He was so penetrating. I think he racked up a bit of the ball as well.
Yes.
So 3, Jack.
Yeah. So sorry to cut you off. I was going to just fill you in for Jack Lukosius. So the Jack Lukosius had 23 touches. He had 20 kicks, 3 handballs, and yeah, he was quite efficient with his kicks as well. One thing I did notice about Jack Lukosius as well was when he was kicking, it was going over the head of a lot of Eagles players. Clearly, they hadn't sort of seen him kick before or had underestimated how far his kicks were going, and we got over the back a few times because of it. But no, I think those are pretty worthy choices, Lincoln. Matt, what about your 3, 2, and 1?
It's a tough one because I think the single point is probably the toughest one. I might even do it in reverse, perhaps. I think Jack Boze was probably the best on ground, to be perfectly honest. So he gets the 3. For the 2, it's a tough one. I really liked Oleg Markov's debut game. I thought he added a lot of run. Some of his efficiency was a bit down, whereas David Swallow had a game where he sort of peeled back the years. So, I mean, I'm probably inclined to give Swallow the 2, just especially for that goal in the third where he sort of kicked it out of the muck, but he was just everywhere. For the point, I'm inclined to give it to Ben King. I thought I saw enough out of him to suggest that, I mean, whilst he could have had a better day, he still had 3 goals. He was working his butt off. There was that one goal that he kicked where he was part of the connecting play, basically starting from defence, going all the way to the other end of the ground. I thought it was great. If he could take 1 or 2 extra marks, he basically is best on ground if he gets 5 goals. So he probably gets the point for mine.
Excellent. No, that's all good. I was going to say I thought Swallow, for me, I'm not counting my votes this week, but if I was to sort of have a few honourable mentions, I would definitely have Swallow as probably one of my best on ground, because I thought that that's the best game I've seen Dave Swallow play in a long, long time. He did his tackling, like he tackled pretty well. Like he only had 3 tackles, but his pressure was there. You could see his pressure there. His kicking was a lot better. I haven't seen him as efficient at kicking as I saw him in that game. I think he just hit targets. He hit some absolute great targets. Other players that sort of want to give a quick mention that maybe didn't get a mention just then. Charlie Ballard played pretty well. I thought in suspended, took 12 marks. Again, I thought he was pretty good. Lockie Weller had a pretty good game in the midfield. And also someone like a Sean Lemons who didn't get a lot. He got the ball 16 times, but I think he did a pretty good job on Liam Ryan when the whips were cracking. Yeah, Liam Ryan probably got a few cheap touches at the end of the game when sort of the contest was over, but I thought he did quite a good job as sort of a very physical back pocket. And so, yes, there are just some sort of honorable mentions I would throw in there as well. So after that, round in, Jack Boze is currently leading our soon-to-be-named medal with 5 votes. Lukosius has 3 votes, and Swallow is currently sitting on 2 votes. Really quickly, Lincoln, because me and Matt are sort of giving our opinions on this already. If you were to pick a best and fairest for this year, who do you think it will be at the end of the season?
The end of the season, that's tough. I don't. You know what? Considering I just gave him the 3 votes, I think Jack Lukosius, he was already starting to come through at the start, sort of like the midway to late way at the end of last year. I think he's going to keep developing now that he's being played more forward and sort of more on the wing. His kick is just going to go straight to BK's big mitts.
Yeah, I also think Ben King, sort of just going back to the game really quick. I think that he could have had an exceptional game if he didn't drop a few marks that he dropped. I feel like there was a few sort of very easy marks that he dropped. And if he can start nailing those, he kicked 3 goals for the game. So he had a decent game, but he would have kicked 4 or maybe even 5. And then you're starting to really sort of see some real progression there. So I think overall, yeah, Lukosius is a good pick. Not something I can't even remember who I picked now. I might have even picked someone I might have even gone the lazy option and gone Rowell or Anderson or something like that. But I think Lukosius is a good pick. All right, let's draw a line under that game. That game is done. We thought we were okay. We were underdogs going over to Western Australia to put in a plucky performance. This week is a completely different kettle of fish. We are playing North Melbourne at Metricon on Saturday night. This is a game we have to win. There's no other way about it. If we're serious about improving at all, we need to win this game. Lincoln, have you got any thoughts heading into the game this weekend? Just off the, just sort of any preliminary thoughts about the game?
Can we just win, please? I don't know how else to say it. But I think you summed it up perfectly. If we are any chop or any talk, any seriousness, if you're going to talk serious, that makes no sense. If we're going to sort of be serious about improving, we have to win this game. This is a must win. Failure is not an option. I'm gonna warm up my microwave pretty early if we lose.
Matt,
so if we play like we did yesterday, we'll win against North Melbourne based on watching their game and a number of other games over the weekend. If we play like that, so the thing that I'm worried about is that it rains and suddenly we have to play a completely different style of footy. That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think before the podcast, we were talking about that game up in Cairns a few years ago, where we played basically with snorkels, and we actually got the win up in Cairns in a very, very physical game. I think I would love us to play that style, like kick style again. The kick mark, short 45-degree angle kicks. I'd love us to do that again if the weather is conducive for it, because I think we had real success with that, and I like us actually kicking the ball and hitting a target. Feels so good. But if it was to rain, as Matt is suggesting, I think we'd actually be pretty well set up, because I think we would have the bigger bodies in the midfield. You think of like your Swallows, your Tookenhams. Hugh Greenwood would have an absolute field day in those sort of conditions. So I think yeah, I would like to see that kick mark style of game we played. But I think regardless of the weather, there's absolutely no excuses for this game. So Lincoln, what are the ins and outs you would have this week? Would there be anyone? Obviously, Rowell comes out, so someone automatically has to come in. But would there be anyone else you would take out, or anyone else you'd look to put into the team?
I think, look, I would personally, first of all, keep Nick Holman as a sub. I think he's a really good position because he's super flexible, can go most positions, gives a bit of run and a bit of tackle, like when he's fresh, assuming hopefully no one gets injured or someone gets a tight hamstring and you have to bring him on, coincidentally enough. in terms of the like replacement, I feel like someone like a Fiorini will probably get called in as like another like inside midfielder or another chance here. Sorry, like another player who could come in. My man, AD Alex Davies, #1 ticket holder. It's only played a pracky match against Brizzy, but I think he was best on ground in it. At least that's what I'd like to believe.
I think it was a VFL game, and yeah, he definitely was best on ground in that VFL game from what I read. So you think, Rao comes out and you would like to see Fiorini or Alex Davies come in. Remember that we've also got Ainsworth that missed round 1 because of a tight hamstring, so he has to come in as well. So is there anyone else you would take out, Lincoln, or are you just sort of saying
McPherson?
Your McPherson comes out? Why was McPherson come out?
Because Ben Ainsworth is better than he is.
Fair enough.
I'm sorry. No, I think they're both pressure forwards, and Benny, I think he's got a lot more upside. Darcy's a good like sort of soldier, a good pressure forward, good tackler, but I think that's as much as you're going to like get out of him compared to say a Benny who has those sort of periods where he could potentially turn it on. Yet he hasn't yet. Another big improver as well for this year, hopefully.
Yeah, fair enough. No, that sounds fair. That's probably the sort of changes I'd look at. I'd definitely look at bringing McPherson out. This is going to quickly turn into the Darcy McPherson hate podcast, and it's not. But I promise you, there's a Lincoln. Did you listen to our earlier episodes where there's currently 2 players on this podcast that I think aren't good enough to play in the first. We won't mention their names, but we're not a hate podcast. We're a loving podcast here, so we're not gonna go into that. But Matt, how about you? So obviously Rao has to come out. So who are you looking to bring in this week?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy. Ainsworth finds a way in. In terms of the outs, I mean, DMAC was okay, but the problem is in terms of how I remember the game, it's usually the number of times I yell out a player's name, either in frustration or elation. And I remember 2 very distinct times where I'm like, DMAC, what are you doing? I think there was a kick out on the full at a fairly inopportune time that comes to mind. I don't know if Fiorini's sort of done enough to really justify a spot in the side, but I mean, if he gets an opportunity, get him in, he might be really hungry for it. So I want to see Ainsworth in. I think he's got like a whole bunch of like pluck. He's sort of like our answer to like Zorko. I get the feeling that he just wants to get in there, and he's the right person to have in your team. You'd hate to play against him. That's sort of it, really.
Yeah, he sort of strikes me someone with a bit of niggle, which is something we do need from time to time. All right, so now we're coming towards the end of the episode, so I do need your tips for the Taylor Hine Cup. We did have fun last week trying to think of players that have played for West Coast and Gold Coast. So Taylor Hine is my pick this week. If you've got a better one, either of you two, feel free to tell us now.
That would be mine.
Aaron Hall. Okay, yeah. Fair enough. No, that's fair enough. No, Aaron Hall. I'm trying to think of some others that have played for both North Melbourne and Gold Coast.
The problem is, Keegan, is you'll know the most absolute niche player, and I'll just be like, yeah, I think I know them.
Could we count Bailey Scott because he was in our academy? We probably can't. Anyway, so we're playing for the Taylor. I've decided we're playing for the Taylor Hine Cup this week. So Matt, give us a tip and give us by how much and a bit of an explanation of why.
So I suspect it's going to be a wet weather match. So with that as the background, I suspect the Suns will get up to the tune of 5 goals. If it was a dry game, I would expect it to be more. But given it's going to rain basically until the end of time on the Gold Coast, I'm expecting it to only be a 5-goal win.
Okay, cool. So 5-goal win. Lincoln, what is your tip for this week?
Please God, Gold Coast win. I actually think Gold Coast, I think they will win. It's weird saying that after being a fan for many, many years. I think Gold Coast, I mean, like I said, it depends if it rains and then how much it rains. I think I looked up the weather, and it's only supposed to have like a 10% chance of precipitation that night, but it's been raining for the whole week, so it'll probably still be quite wet. I would say, I think 5 to 6 would be reasonable. It could be a bit less depending on, like I said, on how much it rains.
Oh, fair enough. All right. So about both of you have about 5 or 6 goals. I am going to say Gold Coast as well. I think we'll lift the Taylor Hine Cup. And I also think that we will win. I'm going to go a bit heavier. I'm going to go 8 goals. I think what will happen is be similar to what happened with West Coast is they'll probably sit with us for a while. And then our more, and I love saying this, our more experienced bodies will push us up over the top probably sometime after half time, and then we'll hit 8 goals or 7 or 8 goals, and then we'll sit there for the rest of the game. I don't think we can come in, and my worry and the reason I'm worried is we come in with massive heads and we go, oh, we'll absolutely dominate, we'll absolutely run over the top of them. We can't go in thinking like that, and hopefully Jews got into their heads that they can't be thinking like that. So they go in thinking like that, they're gonna lose. And the absolute meltdown that will happen if we lose, there's a certain person that we know will be hitting the nuke button so quickly on the Gold Coast Suns that it will make your head spin, and I'll be getting a message from him straight away as soon as that happens. So I also think the Suns will win this week. And that is it. That brings us to the end of episode 4 of Turn Over the Tape. So thank you, Matt, for joining us as always.
Yep, no problem.
And thank you, Lincoln, for joining us for this week. We'll definitely look to have you on for future podcasts as well. Thank you so much for turning up.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for listening at home as well. Make sure you do give us a like, give us a subscribe, whatever way you're listening to it. Make sure you do support, because it's really nice to see our numbers slowly grow. It's really silly. I like looking. I work in analytics. I really like the numbers. So give me more numbers to look at. All right. Anyway, guys, thank you for listening, everyone out there. And join us next week for another episode of Turn Over the Tape. Bye-bye.